here, but I am going to ask our audience if our audio sounds all right before we actually like dive in. So we'll just start talking and we're just going to make sure it's all good. Hey, everybody out there. We are getting ready to start. We're going to do audio test. I'm down in the studio. I've moved things around to try and get rid of some echoing that we had last week, some clicky noises. We're here. And I'd love to, Flying Out says it sounds great. Blair, Justin, can you guys speak?
Testing 1, 2, red leather, yellow leather.
Red leather, yellow leather. Wait, that's a new one.
Is Justin louder than us?
No, I'm just the normal volume of me speaking. The more you turn me down, the more I yell. So it just doesn't. Boy. I'm going to make sure my volume is
yelly.
Red, yelly, yellow, yelly.
Yellow, yelly. Yes. Justin is loud, says Ulysses. I would like all kinds of soft leather boots.
Boots and cats and boots and cats and boots and cats and beep.
Actually, all three of your levels over there sound good.
I'm a bit quieter again, says Identity 4. Again! Always. I'm turning myself up a little bit. Let's see if this helps at all. And if I can be louder, maybe that will fix it. And then we have Sarita. Will you say a couple of hello?
How do I sound?
You
sounds good.
Great.
All right.
We're ready to go then. We've got all the audio and I can take it all and I'll fix it in post, at least as much as I can, for what we've got. All right, everybody. 5 by 5, says Robert Bigelow. All right. Oh, yes, much better. Okay, that's a set it and forget it, I think. There we go. And I think then that would make it time to begin the show. So starting recording in 3, 2, I forgot what I was going to say.
This is
TWIS episode something.
It's the same.
Recorded on something.
No, I need to look very quickly at Justin's. Okay. All right. Starting in 3, 2. This is TWIS. This Week in Science, episode number 668, recorded on Wednesday, April 25th, 2018. Want some more science? Hey, everybody, I am Dr. Kiki, and tonight on TWIS, we are going to fill your heads with sweaty trees, stinky planets, and male flute fries? No, fruit fries. Yeah. But first...
Disclaimer. There are certain things in this world that you should keep in mind. Interesting things, exciting things, things that fill you with wonder, wonderful things to keep in mind when facing the difficult, the daunting, or even the most monstrously monotonous of challenges. You need something that inspires you. And while that something may not inspire me, and my something may not inspire you, we all live a little more electric lives when we find our somethings. And there is always a little something for everyone to be found here on This Week in Science. Coming up next.
I got issues tonight. I'm sorry, everybody.
I've got the kind of mind I can't get enough. I want to learn everything. I want to fill it all up with new discoveries that happen every day of the week. There's only one place to go to find the knowledge I seek. I want to know what's happening. What's happening? What's happening this week in science? What's happening? What's happening? What's happening this week in science?
Good science to you, Kiki and Blair.
And And it didn't work. My whole setup with music is going crazy tonight. And good science to you too, Justin, Blair, and everyone out there. I would love to welcome you to another episode of This Week in Science. We're back yet again to talk about all the science that we thought was fit to bring to the internets this week for our episode. Hey, I've got all sorts of really cool stories this week. I have stories about stinky planets, well, at least one particular stinky planet, colliding galaxies, and puffy galaxies. And we have an interview with the founder of Smore magazine. Back to that in a minute. Justin, what did you bring for the show tonight?
I've got a burning desire for trees and GDT cells. Oh, and black holes, supermassive ones, maybe everywhere.
Everywhere. Blair, what is in the animal corner?
Oh my goodness. After a very long hiatus, we have some invertebrate sex this evening. And then I have some flies blowing bubbles.
Seriously? Yeah. I'm looking forward to that one. Bubble blowing flies. We'll talk to you at 10. As we jump into the show, everyone, I want to remind everyone that you can, if you have not, you can subscribe to the TWIS podcast everywhere good podcasts are found, at the Apple Podcast Marketplace, the Google Play Podcast Portal, Stitcher, Spreaker, TuneIn. You can find us on YouTube and Facebook. You can look for us This Week in Science, all those places, or just go to twis.org and you will find links there. All right, so now let's dive into the show. Everyone, I would like to introduce you to our guest this evening. Our guest is Dr. Sarita Menon. She got her Ph.D. in cancer biology from the University of Iowa and spent several years working as a postdoctoral researcher and then as an adjunct faculty before making the jump from research to science education. She started a science enrichment program in the Houston area a few years back, and last year launched her current endeavor, which is called Smore magazine, with a Kickstarter. Sarita, welcome to the show.
Hi, I'm so glad to be here today.
We're really glad that you could join us. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Okay, so you have a fascinating path. And I was reading through various profiles of you online, and in one, you describe yourself as a mompreneur. So I'd love to know, what was your path from academia and your interest in science into this role as a businesswoman?
So, interest in science is something I always had. Growing up in India, science and engineering is something that's like ingrained into you as the path to a better life. You have to get a good education, and science and engineering are the go-to fields. So that was something, it was a no-brainer for me. And I was always fascinated with biology and chemistry. So those were my favorite subjects. So science was always there. So the path to getting a PhD was kind of like, oh, time to I just got done with my master's. What next? I guess a PhD. All right. So I just started applying to universities, and you got a few offers. And I'm like, I've never got on a plane before. This was 2001. So I've never got on a plane before. But here's an application accepted from the University of Iowa. Let me just hop on that plane, sit for 18 hours, and end up in the cornfields of Iowa. I come from a pretty happening metropolitan city in India. So, it was that was kind of I wouldn't call it a culture shock, more like environment shock for me. But it was an amazing time there. I learned a lot. It was a great experience. So I got my PhD, had some fantastic mentors throughout my PhD, postdoc training, and research assistantship. But somewhere along there, right after the postdoc, there comes a time when, you have to choose a path, whether you're going to stay in academia, run a lab, be an independent investigator, apply for grants, get rejected and apply again, and just keep trying to get funding year in and year out in this current situation. And I did not see myself doing that. And so I had to take a decision. And teaching was something, I think it was something that's always there in me. My parents, my mom was a teacher. My grandfather was a teacher. So I guess I just got the teacher gene. So it was like, I got to go into teaching. And I was pretty good at it, if I would say so myself. So I like breaking down concepts to the simplest possible form, because that's the way I understand it. And I realized a lot of, especially kids, that's the way they understand it. They love being talked to in that way. So, and so I was like, okay, there's science. I've always loved it, but I don't want to stay in the ivory towers. Time to move out. But so the options were something related to university teaching, which I did. And then came this opportunity to get into a business, a science business. And that really excited me because I love interacting with people. So that's how it started. So, and then Smore came later. Was that long enough?
So that's how it got started. And I mean, I understand the educational aspect and, you know, especially the teaching, you know, with these enrichment programs there where you're going and having these one-on-one or group experiences, hands-on, demonstrating scientific principles to kids. And, you know, this, you know that you're having an impact.
Yes.
What was it that brought you from this face-to-face interaction to finally saying, okay, I want to make a magazine? I mean, it's a big jump.
It is. And for somebody who has no idea about how a magazine is even published. So it did not start out as an idea for a whole magazine. It started out as, oh, let's put out the simple science newsletter that would be very local. And we'll just, you know, if there's any show or there's a free science event happening, we would feature it so everybody knows about it. And we just wanted more people to take an active interest in science. So we wanted to make science more public, more mainstream, just the understanding and the engagement. But over time, I was like, if I'm putting in that much effort, maybe I can make it regional. Oh, maybe I can have it circulated in the greater Texas area. And then I was like, why not just make it international? So, and then that question,
Why not?
I'm anyway putting it together. So I'm like, okay, let's just, and then we got into the real, okay, who are we making it for? What is the target demographic? And there were a few things that I was also looking into at that time. And I was really passionate about bringing more focus to the women scientists, because I have been in science, a women of color in science. So there were a lot of the problems or the challenges women of color face in academia. I was kind of in the middle of all that. So that awareness was there. And there was also this kind of, it used to bother me a lot that we would read magazines about actresses, and we would read magazines where singers and now even YouTubers are on magazine covers. But nobody's talking about these remarkable women who have made such amazing inventions, and they're doing such breakthrough scientific research, and you know, they're all in scientific publication. Nobody in the mainstream really knows about them. So I'm like, why is that, right? It's time to really bring science out from the classrooms, from the universities, make it more mainstream, and just get a general appreciation of the work and celebrate the people who are doing it. And so that kind of was the basis of the idea for the magazine. And then it really narrowed it down furthermore. I'm like, hey, let's try to feature these women on the covers. That would be cool. And then I reached out to a few people, and just the tremendous amount of response we got to that was like, okay, I think this is going to go great. And that's pretty much how we got started.
I love it.
Sometimes it's still unbelievable for me that I'm looking at something that is, you know, oh, is that something we put together? We have a small team. It's not too big. We are still an indie magazine. So really, we put it all together ourselves. And the team is predominantly women in science. So we have science writers on the team and an amazing illustrator who we just put together. So and then we have freelance science writers who contribute articles. So we do get a lot of interest from science communicators who would like to be featured in the magazine, which is just amazing. I love hearing about all these. And these are people I probably would never know about if it was not for Smore. So it's amazing how many people, how many women I'm able to get in touch with. And I'm just blown away by the amount of work. And it's just inspiring to me. So I just can't imagine how much it would be influencing a young girl reading this. So it brings me great joy. I'm very motivated to do this every day because of that.
And is this your main project at this point in time? Is this
at this point? Yes, it is like that newborn baby that needs a lot of attention and I'm the clueless parent. He's like, okay, I'm listening to a lot of things. I'm reading. Okay, how do I publish a magazine? What goes where? And oh, I guess we need an art director. So it's a very big. It's a very steep learning curve. Like we have to learn everything right away because the next issue is due, right? So, and I love that challenge of putting it all together, figuring out how this thing is going to come together. And so we're learning a lot at the same time, but each day is a new experience, and I love it.
And is this funded by Kickstarter?
Hello?
Kiki's got some sort of audio issues. So I guess you said you started some of this with a Kickstarter?
Yeah, because when we decided to get into it, of course, we would need some capital to get started. Even though it was an indie magazine, we would still need to pay our writers and illustrators. And there's a basic cost that goes in to putting a magazine. And the other idea, it was an idea, and my market size or who I was asking, would this magazine be something you would buy? It was very small, just a few friends. And I was like, that's not enough market research. I need to know if I put my effort into it, is this something that's going to catch on? Is this something that's going to be popular? So the idea for a Kickstarter was also not only to generate that initial capital to get this thing going, but also to see what is the interest? Are people going to be excited about this? Is this something that's going to turn into a movement where we are now really celebrating? We are talking about science icons, just as the way we talk about style icons or pop icons. So we wanted to be that media, but we wanted to see whether there is that interest. Are people ready to embrace that kind of media? So. And I'm happy to tell you that people were very, very excited about it. And we had a super successful Kickstarter campaign, and we reached our goal within a week. And then we went on to get a lot more. And so we have enough capital to get us through. And then once the Kickstarter was over, even after that, we are gaining subscribers at a very, very satisfactory rate. I like what I'm seeing, right? So we are nowhere like, there yet, but there is definitely that interest, and people like to read this. We get emails from parents. They take pictures of their young girls with our magazine in front of them, and you can't believe how much joy that brings to me, because he's like, oh, my daughter is absolutely in love with this magazine. She holds it and takes it to her bed. I wanted to share this magazine with a few of my friends, but she will not let go of her copy. So I guess I'm going to buy a few more from you. I'm like, please do. So it's amazing to see that response, and that really keeps me going. And it is very validating to see that this is a magazine that its time has come. It's time we need to put more women role models. We need to make them more visible. So there are girls out there who are not really sure whether they love science, but they don't know what to do with that. They don't know what are the possibilities out there. But now she's seeing this amazing scientist in this super successful job. And she's like, that's who I want to be. Or another roboticist who is building robots to send them to Mars. And she's like, I want to do that, right? So now girls are seeing possibilities. And I would say they are endless. So that's kind of where we want Smore to be, like reach every girl who feels like she may not be able to do it, but we want to tell them, it's okay. You can do it. Just look at all these amazing women. They have done it. You can too. So.
And not just I'm sorry, there's a little feedback.
Yes.
Sorry about the feedback. Hey, Justin, go ahead.
Oh, wait, right when you say Justin, go ahead, all the feedback
you're
is
fixed
gone.
now.
I got fixed. Okay, yeah. I don't know what happened there. So I was going to ask, though, on the website, looking through, it says with the subscription to this magazine, it's not just either the print or the online version. You're also doing webinars and you're making additional interactive content available.
That was something that came about quite recently. We started getting parents who were saying that, they loved seeing the scientist on the cover and she would just love to talk to them. And I was like, why not? Let me see what I can do. And we talked to Melissa was one of our scientists we featured on the cover. She was a marine biologist and she was super excited. And she's like, this is great. I get to talk to somebody who's read about my work and she will have questions for me and I get to answer that. What can be better than that? So we kind of pretty much just mediated that. So we are like the platform that brings amazing women in science and shows them to these girls, and they have these questions and they get them answered right there. So this was something that came about as parents started reaching out to us and saying, this is great. And then so we are like, okay, let's take this forward. Let's make this something that's an additional feature to our subscribers. And I'm very excited for this. We're already planning out, who should we get next? So it's a lot of excitement there.
I would be excited. Yeah. Go ahead, Justin.
What do you think that those girls are heading to if they've chosen this career of science? Do you think that it's going to be the same environment that you initially walked into when you were pursuing, or do you think things have improved since then?
Definitely. They have improved, mainly because I think since the last year or so, there's a lot more emphasis on, there's a lot more empowerment going on. So that people are talking more about the need for empowering girls, making them feel like they belong in a certain field. They need to believe in themselves. So there are a lot of movements, there are a lot of organizations that are hard at work to do that. And it makes me very happy to see that there's this movement, that there are a lot of organizations that are part of it and that we are a part of it. So I like that. So it's definitely a very different environment than it was when I was starting out. So, but considering how few women are currently there in tech and computer science, I would say I like the way this movement is going. We want more of these people, women in these fields, and we want the young girls to feel like gender is not what is going to determine what I choose. If I like a field, I'm going to get into it. I'm not going to be hesitant in following computer science because I might be the only girl in that class. So that might be a complete non-issue in the future. And that's what we hope for.
And work like you're doing, I think, is very important that end too. We did the Young Innovators Fair a while back. and there was a girl there who started her own computer programming class, which you're reminding me of right now.
Yeah.
That because there was the boy class and they were creating some sort of war game. I don't know. They were doing boy stuff with the programming, I guess. So she started her own girl programming club, and too bad it had to be segregated. But it was a thing that caught on, and she's like going off to university, but going back to the junior high school where she started this club, and it's continuing on. And there was, at a Young Innovators Fair, I think the girls outnumbered the boys. And those who were doing robotics and programming and showing up with their experiments. So that kind of that outreach that's going on is working.
It's working, yeah. I agree. I think there used to be this notion that science is for the geeks and the nerds, and if you necessarily do not associate yourself with that crowd, then you probably are not into the science. You can't be hip and cool and yet be into robotics. There was this sort of a mindset, which right now science is being made cool. If you are smart, you are cool.
And for those of us tragically uncool, and that was the one thing we had that the rest of you didn't, well, you've taken that now too.
That's right. Yeah, I'm very excited because I just had this conversation the other day about there was a new documentary out called Jane, about Jane Goodall, and it uses this lost footage that was found from some of her field work in Africa, and I think it's amazing. It's wonderful that this documentary has been made, but when you think about how many women you can name, female scientists, right? Jane Goodall is the one. Maybe
Marie Curie, like the iconic ones, like the ones who are.
Yeah, and there's and I think what's happening right now is, whereas before it was these huge male names who dominated this field, what we're seeing now is this massive wave of diversity and all these women from many, many fields, from computer science, from robotics, from biology, marine biology, chemistry, astrophysics. I mean, you look on Twitter and it is active with all these young women who want to talk about this amazing work they're doing and what they're learning. And I feel like there's, where it used to be this slow trickle, there is just a tidal wave coming. And it's because of stuff like what you're doing.
Thank you.
And it's all about representation. I mean, as much as we try to tell kids you can be whatever you want to be,
unless they see them, that's true.
Absolutely. And so the more they can see women in science, and the thing that I always come back to is that when I was a kid, I didn't really understand fully what science encompassed. And so really a place where you can see all the different fields of science and influences of science and science integrated into other fields. That's the thing that really I simultaneously wish I had, but I'm also super excited for this next generation to be equipped with that information and move forward.
And that's another goal of Smore, is to bring science out of the classroom. For kids, it's always this, there's a science test, there's a science textbook, it stays in the school, but we want to bring it out. And there are a lot of other groups and organizations who are doing it, and that's amazing. So our idea is also to educate kids that science is everywhere around you. So never lose your sense of curiosity, keep asking questions. Being in the kitchen is science. Seeing how your dad fixes his car might be a lesson. Hopefully, if he does it well, it might be a lesson in mechanics. So there are a lot of things that kids need to appreciate, that there is a use of knowing all this information. It shows you how people with scientific literacy, how important that is. See, our goal is not to raise the next generation of only scientists. I mean, that's not going to happen. So, yeah. But it's that general awareness of how, so people who understand science, they think a certain way. They know how to analyze data. They know when they look at something, they can question it. They can find sources on where to look and form their own opinions rather than just going with a herd mentality, right? Just going with what everybody's saying. So I think that comes with a certain degree of scientific literacy, and that is important for everybody. So irrespective of if you're a boy or a girl, if you are going to go to be a ballet dancer, if you're going to be a chef, if you are going to be a scientist, right? That basic information is very important. And I think all kids, it would serve them well to be educated in science and know about how the world works. So that's another thing that I like to emphasize, as we are not a magazine just to raise scientists. It is for everybody.
Are you including any articles about critical thinking, or is it mostly about the scientific process or particular types of science or certain findings?
Yeah, so right now, like I said, everything is, a lot of things are still not really set in stone. We do like to incorporate things. Maybe some things are not working. We would slowly, so we are going to make changes constantly because we're just a year old. There are a lot of things. It's a work in progress. But right now, our main idea was, let's simplify basic science topics, space and tech, just simple science in the news, all the technology, just put it out there in front of the kids in small bite-sized information, just enough to pique their interest. So somebody who didn't think much about space suddenly reads an article about how rockets actually go off into space and they are staged. They don't all go off and end up in the same, 3 pieces. At the end, there's just the main engine, the rocket left. There's a lot more fuel tanks that get disposed along the way. So, but that is fascinating information, but somebody doesn't know that. But it piques their interest enough, and the next thing you know, they're learning all about it. So our idea is not going deep, we are going wide. So because I think kids need to know a lot of information before they can really hone in on what their true interests, where their true interests lie. So right now our content is science topics, but I love that you said that about critical thinking and how to learn and how to analyze. Those I think would be a great webinar topic. So we are looking at a sort of series on scientific thinking and critical thinking. So those are things that are in my ideas list. I am putting the ever expanding ideas list. So
it's a tool I use with my own kids. It's sort of a Moulin Nasruddin or a Mr. Noodle from Sesame Street, where I will do things the wrong way intentionally and let them figure out the right way to do it. Like, I mean, my kids might all just think I'm an idiot now. but I like sort of tricking them into critical thinking and getting them to figure out how to do something.
Yeah. There was a video on Facebook some time back where the dad I think he was teaching the kids the concept of coding, but he was telling them to write down the recipe for making a peanut butter jelly sandwich, and he would follow exactly what that kids wrote down, and it never ended up as a perfect. It was hilarious, but I think those kids learned a lot of important lessons about coding. So there's opportunities to learn everywhere.
So one of the segments on this show we call "What Has Science Done for You Lately?" And I'm just wondering, from your perspective, as we finish up this interview, what has science done for you lately?
So science for me lately has opened up this whole new world of people, women scientists that, frankly, I was not aware. I knew they were out there, but I was not in touch with them. But right now, I am connected to them through Twitter, through our science magazine. And I read up on them, and I'm just blown away by their contributions and their successes and their achievements and just how smart and witty and funny they can be. And I'm like, the world needs to see you, and we are going to celebrate you. We're going to put you on our covers and show you off. So I love
Awesome.
that science has brought me in touch with all these amazing personalities in science and technology and engineering and math. They call it STEM now. So.
And then you can put arts in there, and you got
Arts in there.
STEAM, and then if you put in history or humanities, you've got STEAM. And
There's a version with sports in it too.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so that's Bill Nye famously recently said, yeah, now it's just what we call school.
it's just education, that's all.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah. So, Dr. Menon, if you could let us know, where can our listeners find out more information about Smore if they are interested in it for their kids?
So right now we are available online at www.smoremagazine.com. And, there's a subscribe button. There is an option for print or digital. Digital, it's available through our App Store, Android, and Apple stores. Google Play, actually. Yeah, that's the one. And you can always reach out to me. My Twitter handle is Sarita_Menon, and our Smore magazine handle is @Smore Magazine, but the A is missing after the G, so it's MAGZINE. And we are on Facebook, we are on Instagram, we are everywhere, so it will be hard to miss us. I mean, it's very easy to reach out to us. We would love to hear from everybody about it, and ideas, context. We've had a lot of people telling us, oh, have you featured her? And she is amazing. I'm like, oh, I did not know about her. Let me read up. It's amazing the kind of feedback I'm getting from people, and they are putting me in touch with some remarkable women.
I think this is just fabulous. Thank you so much for your time tonight, Sarita. It has been just wonderful getting to speak with you about your experiences and what brought you into this endeavor of this new magazine, Smore, and the hopes for where it will go. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. It was such a pleasure to talk to you all.
Absolutely. Hope we hear from you again.
Yes.
Best of luck with the magazine. I hope you get lots of subscribers.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much. Everyone out there, once again, the magazine website is smoremagazine.com if you are interested. We are going to take a short break, so this might be your chance to get up and stretch a little bit, or, just stay where you are, because we will be back with more stories. I've got space. I've got colliding galaxies. I've got a stinky planet. I think Justin's got some...
I've got some colliding galaxies and some
steamy trees,
sweaty trees.
Sweaty trees, and Blair has those invertebrates and their sex,
and also some flies blowing bubbles.
And flies blowing bubbles. We will be back in just a few moments with more This Week in Science.
Can't explain things you've heard more than intuition. A line of reason shows the way to go. New conclusion. The methods are
Hey everyone, thank you so much for listening to the show, or if you're watching right now, thank you for watching and possibly for bearing with me. I have a new setup here yet again, and I've got things in different places, and so there are a few bumps and hiccups along the way, but you know what? They'll be edited out for the podcast. But those of you who are watching live get to enjoy and laugh with me at the progress. Anyway, progress is being made thanks to you. All of you out there, thank you so much for your support of TWIS over the years and currently. Without you, we could not do all the things that we do. And how could you help us out? Oh, how, I ask? I feel like I should start a Dr. Seuss story right about now. How? Well, let me tell you. Head on over to twis.org, TWIS.org, and you can find out even more ways to help TWIS. First off, you can subscribe. If there's a big orange subscribe button on our webpage. You click on that subscribe button. It will give you links for Google Play's podcast portal, iTunes or the Apple directory, and YouTube. You can choose all of those or just one of them, whatever you prefer, and subscribe so you get this podcast every week directly to you. You don't have to search for it. It is there waiting for you. Click that button. Tell your friends to go to twis.org and click the subscribe button if they have not yet subscribed. If you would like to help this show pay the bills, that's right. We need ongoing financial support. We do not take advertising. We are supported only by you listeners. And one thing that you can do is click on the Zazzle link at the top of the page. The Zazzle link will take you to our Zazzle store. Zazzle.com/thisweekinscience is the direct link. You can head there and purchase yourself a TWIS lumbar pillow with a mammoth on it. It's part of the art from years past, Blair's Animal Corner calendars. We also have the TWIS logo emblazoned all over many different products, mugs, t-shirts. We even have a polo shirt for those of you who can't really wear a t-shirt to work, but a polo shirt is right in line with what you can sport. There's a nice TWIS polo shirt. Buying any of these items ends up giving a fraction, a part of the proceeds, the profit from the proceeds to TWIS so that we can pay our bills and we can keep coming to you week after week after week. Additionally, if you head back over to twis.org and scroll down the page, there is a yellow donate button that will allow you to directly donate to This Week in Science using PayPal, or you can head to any of the recent episodes, click on those, and scroll all the way to the bottom of the page past the show notes once you've figured out all the different stories we talked about. And there are wonderful pink buttons that you can click on, and they allow you to donate in an ongoing, recurring basis, month after month after month, either at $2, $5, or $10 a month, so that you just set it and forget it, and then you're supporting TWIS in an ongoing fashion. If you're not into the PayPal thing, we are also part of Patreon. So if you head to patreon.com/thisweekinscience, or just click on our Patreon link, you can click on the big red button that says Become a Patron. That will allow you, again, to donate to TWIS in an ongoing fashion, week after week after week, at the level of your choosing. Whatever works for you, month after month, it'll allow you to help TWIS continue to pay the bills, continue to come to you in this weekly way that we do. You know, everyone. Please tell your friends about TWIS, but honestly, we really couldn't do this without you. Thank you so much for your support. Oh, that's not the right one. Now I have to use my second mouse that's over here and figure out another song to play again.
Can't explain things you've heard with more than intuition. A lot of reason shows the way to go. New conclusion. The methods of hypothesis and patience are the only things I need.
And we are back with more This Week in Science.
Indeed, we are. We are back yet again. And it is time for that segment of the show that we do love so much. This week in What Has Science Done For Me Lately? And right now I would like to read a letter from Ed Godbois. And I know I did not say your name exactly right, and I apologize for that. Is it French? Godbois? Godbois. Godbois. Edward, thank you for writing in. He says, hello, TWIS team. I've really been enjoying your What Has Science Done For Me segment, and I thought I would share my own story. A little over a year ago, my wife and I mentioned to my 3-year-old son's pediatrician he had been experiencing headaches when waking up from his naps. She suggested we see a neurologist just to rule things out. The neurologist said it probably wasn't a big deal, but scheduled an MRI for us just to, again, rule things out. The MRI revealed a brain tumor. The specific type of tumor is called a craniopharyngioma. It's really rare, non-cancerous tumor that is most often diagnosed in children. It impacts the pituitary and optic nerves, and among other things. And over the next several weeks, we had a flurry of appointments. Eventually, we found ourselves in the ER and then the ICU, awaiting his surgery due to the tumor's progression. Shortly after that, he underwent neurosurgery to remove the tumor. His neurosurgeon and her team were able to remove most of the tumor. He has no neurological or sight impairments, but the tumor calcified his pituitary, which has an incredibly important job. He spent the better part of 2 weeks in the hospital recovering from his surgery, and he is now on a number of daily medications to replace what his pituitary would normally do, and we will be starting growth hormone injections soon. We still have monitoring MRIs to check for regrowth and to manage his condition with medications and keep an eye on him. But the thing is, he's now a normal 4-year-old boy. He doesn't experience headaches like he used to. He goes to school and after school activities, has friends, plays with Lego and everything that a normal 4-year-old would do.
Awesome.
Truth be told, he went to a summer camp several weeks after his surgery and was running around, blowing bubbles and running in sprinklers with his friends. You can't even see his craniotomy scar anymore. No one even knows about his ordeal unless we tell them. To everyone, he's just like every other 4-year-old. It amazes me that medical science has advanced to such a point where my son could have a very normal life despite needing to have such a critical part of his brain removed. Less than 100 years ago, he would have suffered immeasurably and probably wouldn't have seen adulthood. We owe his life to a huge team of medical professionals, from his pediatrician to his neurosurgeon to his neuro-oncologist and endocrinologist, all of the amazing nurses, support staff, and the summation of modern medical knowledge. All this gave us our little boy back, and for that, we are profoundly grateful. I know my story is a little long, and it's okay if you guys don't use it or its entirety in the show. I just wanted to add my story to the pile. Keep up the great work. Ed Godbois.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. This one was a doozy. This Ed, your family has been through an amazing ordeal, and it is miraculous. It's amazing what science and medicine are able to do today.
Thank you for sharing, Ed.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. And we wish the best to your family and to your son. And I hope, I know he grows up to be a wonderful man, just like you. I hope you share TWIS with him as he gets older too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, isn't that what every parent would want for a child with unexpected complications? Would be to just be a normal kid. How fantastic.
If you have a story like this that doesn't have a happy ending, please don't share it. I could barely make it through this one. That was hard. That was really hard. Just to hear the ordeal. Thankfully, it has a happy ending there.
It does have a happy ending. Thanks to science. Yeah. Anyone out there who would like to share their story with us about what science has done for you lately, send me an email, Kirsten, Kirsten, at thisweekinscience.com. You can also send us a message on our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/thisweekinscience. We got to keep this show, this part of the story going, right? Let's keep it going. We need you to help us do that. More stories, more inspiration, everyone, please. Now on to the science, huh?
Yeah.
Yes.
And we're going to follow up that story with something stinky. Yes, stinky. And the media has been having a field day with this, because how can you not Uranus stinks.
Oh, don't talk about a planet like that.
And I'm going to pronounce the name of Uranus, the
That's
planet,
not how you say that planet.
correctly.
I don't think that's the correct pronunciation,
Oh,
actually.
it is.
Are you sure?
Well, it's
Has that been double checked? Because I think people mispronounce it all the time, just in attempts not to say its right name.
And to think that I was worried about my terminology choices before we started the show. Here we go.
Here we go. So jumping in, the April 23rd issue of Nature Astronomy has a study. This week's Nature Astronomy has a study using data from the Gemini North Telescope. It's an 8-meter telescope that has looked at infrared light from Uranus. This scope, the Gemini North Telescope, is on Hawaii's Mauna Kea volcano. And in looking at the infrared light and the spectroscopic signature of this light, researchers were able to determine the composition of the cloud tops of this distant planet in our solar system. And they found hydrogen sulfide.
Mm-hmm.
Hydrogen sulfide is the compound which gives eggs their stinky odor. Yes,
isn't that what's in
rotten
stink
egg
bombs
smell.
too?
In stink bombs,
Yeah.
yes, hydrogen sulfide, the eggy, stinky smell. Yes, hydrogen sulfide. So, if you were to go to Uranus, and if you were able to take off your helmet and actually, or be able to breathe in the air of its cloud tops, the cloud tops in its atmosphere, it would stink like gas, like farts. It would.
Okay, no longer veiled, I see.
No, not veiled at all.
Oh my god.
But the
Universe
research
has a sense of humor.
Yeah,
the universe does. Sometimes it's uncanny, the sense of humor that comes out. Yes, researchers have said this is actually a very interesting study. They've been debating the composition of the clouds of Uranus ever since Voyager 2 passed by and took images of the cloud tops. And the debate has been whether hydrogen sulfide or ammonia dominate those clouds, but there was no real evidence. Researcher named Irwin, a researcher named Irwin, he said that now, thanks to improved hydrogen sulfide absorption line data and the wonderful Gemini spectra, we have the fingerprint which caught the culprit. And so these spectroscopic absorption lines, and this is where gas absorbs some of the infrared light reflected from reflected sunlight. It's especially weak and challenging to detect. And this Gemini data allowed them to actually detect it. The cloud decks form through condensation, similarly to here on Earth, and it locks away the cloud-forming gas in deep internal reservoirs that are that are beneath the levels that we can normally see with our telescopes. Another researcher says that only a tiny amount remains above the clouds as a saturated vapor, and this is why it's so challenging to capture the signatures of ammonia and hydrogen sulfide above the cloud decks of Uranus. The superior capabilities, this is their salesmanship for this telescope, the superior capabilities of Gemini are what finally gave us the lucky break. Yes. So telescope, helping them to identify the specific stink of Uranus.
Cool.
Moving on to some... So we move on to some more spacey news. I've got some ancient collisions. A collision course. This is a collision that's happening. No, it happened like 12.5 billion years ago. Over 12.5 billion years ago. researchers found the signature of light far back that that indicated that there were particular types of galaxies that are known as starburst galaxies. And the starburst galaxies are areas where there's a lot of star formation happening. And they took a look at this area of space and the redshift of the light, or whether or not it was moving away from or towards Earth. And so they realized, oh, it's moving very far away. This area is not very large. It's maybe 3 times the size of our own galaxy.
That's big in my book.
It's big, but in terms of what they're looking at and what they found is pretty impressive. What they ended up publishing this week in the magazine, the journal Nature, is something that's called a protocluster. They found 14 galaxies on collision courses with each other. They're coming together, and it is so long ago. It's at the edge of our universe. It is only mere billions of years after the formation of the universe. So what they're seeing, these relatively large, rapidly star forming, so really active galaxies turning into this protocluster means that today, I mean, this happened so long ago, that what they are seeing now with these galaxies all attracted to each other and coming in to collide with each other is probably the largest superstructure in our universe today. But what they're looking at is so long ago, because it's the light that's just reaching us now, right? They're looking at this happening like 12.8 billion years ago. And it's just a prediction of what's to come. But it's also, they don't understand how it could be happening because it's so soon after the formation of the universe that there shouldn't be galaxies this large there. Mm-hmm. So the question is, where did those big galaxies come from to be able to form this protocluster that would eventually be a giant supercluster in our universe? Where did they come from? They don't know. Yeah.
Well, maybe the universe is like a Pac-Man map, and they ran off the edge of the other side, and so they're banging into each other back at the beginning.
Right?
I mean, solved it.
You solved it. That's what we go. Physicist at Dalhousie University in Halifax, Canada, Scott Chapman, he told the LA Times that there are huge energetics involved in this, like 10,000 supernova going off at a time, quite literally. And so these novae are going off and forming new stars, creating new elements. They're making stars 1,000 times faster than the Milky Way is currently producing stars. And it's all of this, these 14 galaxies that are supernovaing and creating stars. And it's just blah, 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 massive light show. It's in a space that's only 3 times bigger than our galaxy. And when you consider everything that's packed into that space and what's happening in that space, nobody really understands how it's there. Chapman says, we don't know how it's possible. We don't know how you get those 14 galaxies right down in the center of the protocluster at such an early time.
Well, yeah, maybe the universe was a lot more crowded in the early days in some areas of space.
Yeah. So researchers are currently trying to figure out are there specific areas of space where these stars were forming much earlier than we thought? Because they would have formed these galaxies would have formed fairly far apart and then come together to create the protocluster. And And so how did that happen? The researchers are going back to the drawing table, back to the books to try and figure out where their models of the early universe may be off. Yeah, to figure this out. And then in terms of just galaxies and what they do as they evolve over time, another study out this week in Nature Astronomy, researchers at the University of Sydney have determined by looking with data from the Anglo-Australian Telescope at Siding Spring Observatory in Australia, looking at all sorts of 3D measurements of galaxies across the board, different kinds of galaxies. So pinwheel galaxies like our own versus any other types of shapes, ages. And they started looking at, okay, the shape of the galaxy versus the color of the stars. And the color of the stars in the galaxies are an indication of how old the galaxies are. So galaxies with bluer stars are younger, and as stars age, they turn into a more red color, and so galaxies with more red stars in them are thought to be older. And so they started inferring the shape and trying to find a link between the shape and the age of the stars within the galaxies and the age of the galaxies themselves. And they determined that nearly all galaxies are squashed spheres, is what they say. So just like a pancake in space, a squashed sphere.
Like our flat Earth, you say?
No, dear. More like a flat galaxy.
Ah, I see.
And the younger the galaxy's stars are, the more squashed it is. But then the older they get, the puffier they get. So it's kind of like, people, as you get older, your metabolism slows down and you get a little puffy, gain a little weight. Yeah. They don't know exactly where the puffiness comes from, but they think it has to do with, traumatic merging of galaxies together, or if one galaxy flies through another galaxy, that may change the dynamics of the galaxy around enough to spread it out a bit and to change the orbital activity of the stars around the central black hole in these galaxies. So for now,
and part of the reason why might be every time you have galaxies merging, you also have supermassive black holes that are joining, and they don't necessarily go into the other one's supermassive black hole. More likely, they orbit around in the galaxy. So when you have these 14 galaxies, you're talking about, whatever galaxies they merged with before, plus their own supermassive black holes now either merging together or getting into orbits with each other. And so, the dynamics could be a lot different. In fact, there's a new study published by the Astrophysical Journal Letters, researchers from Yale University, Washington, University of Washington, Institut d'Astrophysique de Paris, and University College London got together, and they're predicting that galaxies about the size of the Milky Way should host several supermassive black holes, meaning that our own galaxy should be hosting several supermassive black holes.
Huh. Interesting, because that's really interesting, because there was a study a couple of weeks ago that they determined not supermassive black holes, but that there are like mini black holes around the main central black hole.
So these wouldn't be around the main central. Yeah. And because they're not around the main central, which is where the hub of stars are being pulled in and gases are swarming around, and these little mini black holes they could be going around anywhere and be completely invisible until you happen to train a telescope and maybe see some of that background lensing effect. They do kindly throw in an analysis of the chances that our solar system, that our sun could be affected by one of these supermassive black holes, they say it's probably going to happen once every 100 billion years or so, which is like 8 or 9 times the age of the universe. Like once every 8 or 9 universes up till now. So it's not really likely. But because they're outside, they can be outside of the sort of disk even, which then would lead into what's usually like the puffiness over time. The more mergers, these things might not be in that flattened pancake portion even, but could be circulating outside and beyond that without all that accretion of dust and things around them. They're taking up or spitting out, basically invisible. So now they got to figure out how to pinpoint them, how to find them.
Because they're black holes.
Yes. Yeah.
They're dark.
You gotta do the gravitational lensing or nothing, really. That's all you get then.
Yeah. Oh, we need more light benders. More light benders. Justin, you want to talk about sweaty trees?
Okay, yeah. This is a story that's California may have found a solution to future drought conditions.
Ooh.
Yes. Get rid of the trees.
Wait a sec. We need those.
It turns out there are just too dang many trees in the Sierra Nevada forest.
No.
Yes.
What?
This is a huge problem.
What?
Yeah. So I know. My first thought was too like, okay, so to get more water, we destroy things that create ecosystems and produce oxygen. Like this sounds like we're a different problem with the one problem. But this is, according to scientists affiliated with the National Science Foundation, Southern Sierra Critical Zone Observatory, they say, turns out trees use a lot of water.
Mm-hmm.
And in addition, they perspire, soaking up water stored in the ground, expelling it as vapor into the atmosphere in a process known as evapotranspiration. We've got sweaty trees, and we don't get access to that water again until it goes somewhere else and falls down again as rainfall.
Okay, quick counterpoint.
Okay.
Temperature regulation. So if you get rid of the transpiration and you get rid of a lot of the trees, that increases temperature on those areas, which might then affect drought as well.
So it sounds like, it sounds sensible, but sensible isn't always right. And that's sort of the point of this study, because I had the exact same sort of reaction to this. Like, this is sort of nonsensy talk. What they did, though, is, okay, so we have this fantastic system of forest management, including a quick response forest firefighting service. And for the last almost a century, we've gotten increasingly better at preventing wildfires in the Sierras. Now, we had, during the drought, a lot of wildfires that kind of took over for a while. And it turns out the water tables increased kind of significantly. So the explanation here is that because we've controlled wildfires, the forests are sort of overgrown. The normal cycle of wildfire that would normally cut through big sections of forest and then have sparse growth, and actually some, pine trees and stuff actually are designed for a fire for them to reproduce. They're sort of built for that fire season. The overgrowing can be affecting even its own water table, because then you can have other plant life that's fighting for survival, other fauna that's fighting for survival because of the lowered amount of water taken up by all these trees, which normally wouldn't be there because normally they would have these clearing sessions. Quotey voice, this is Richard Utrich, director of NSF's CZO program. Forest wildfires are often considered disasters, but fire is part of healthy forest ecosystems. By thinning out trees, fires can reduce water stress in forests and ease water shortages during droughts. And by reducing the water used by plants, more rainfall flows into the rivers and accumulates in groundwater. So they found out that over the period of 1990 to 2008, fire-thin forests saved 3.7 billion gallons of water annually in California's King River Basin and 17 billion, that's with a B, gallons of water a year in the American River Basin. Water that would have otherwise, they say, been lost through evapotranspiration. So because of the wildfires that we've had sort of in the recent decades, forest thinning increased, and they could see the results from that as well. So what they're sort of also saying, and here's sort of the thing, is they need about $10 billion-ish, the U.S. Forest Service says, to handle restoration work in California. But if they use that funds to also be doing thinning of sections of forests and use that as part of the restoration management, they could actually save the state more money in water produced than it would cost them to do the effective work. Very unintuitive, that connection between less trees and increased watershed, and looking at the forest, not just for the trees that are there, but for the trees that wouldn't be there if we weren't messing with it constantly.
Yeah, I think that it makes sense. And I understand that we definitely know that forest fires there's a sweet spot with them and that it's a part of nature. But we also know that there's a lot of ecosystems where natural forest fires are burning out of control because of drought. So that's another side to this, is that if we have reduced rainfall and we're trying to do controlled fires, we have to be very careful because they are burning out of control farther and faster than we are used to. So there's that side of it, right?
But it's also, are they burning more out of control because there's more trees there and there's less natural fire breaks?
No,
there weren't fires there in previous seasons, and now that
No, this is actually due to climate change and due to drought. This is a study that we've talked about on the show before, is that in normal natural fire circumstances in forests, they're burning out of control because of climate change. So that's just something that also has to be considered in this. But I think the surface temperature is something that it looks like they didn't look at in this study. And that would be something that I would be interested to look at as well, because like I said, transpiration has a huge impact on surface temperature. And whereas they might be taking water from us, they might also be reducing the impact of climate change on these landscapes by larger forests. So anytime you mess with an ecosystem, right, there are pros and cons. And I think that this needs more study before we can say definitively that more controlled burns are the right way to go.
I mean, and maybe what it means is they're going to actually cut down more trees. Maybe it's not controlled burns. Maybe it's going in and thinning through selective logging.
They actually refer to it as mechanical thinning, which I'm assuming means chainsaws.
It could be chainsaws, as opposed to chemical.
Yeah.
Which would be fire. But
if that's the case, then they're not going to pop open pine cones with heat. So that's a problem.
Yeah. But at this point, it's just making me think about the fine line of managing or thinking that we can manage ecosystems. Do we really know enough and understand enough to think that, okay, we're going to thin it just enough to get just enough water in the water table, and we're going to balance the evapotranspiration for the water cycle to be putting water into the air, which is part of a natural cycle of water going down and then coming back out and getting back out into the atmosphere. And like Blair was talking about, of natural cooling, also of increasing water vapor in the air, which can lead to clouds to reflect sunlight.
But they don't fall here in California, which is the problem.
Right. But you can't think about just California. You have to
water
globally. It's a cycle, man. Cycles don't connect,
bro.
I think in this case, what they're talking about, what they're proposing is mitigating the effects of human mitigation.
Right.
Yeah.
I think mitigate the damage we've done with our conservation work.
Yeah, and I think what this study actually is saying, it's a mea culpa. It's like, oh, we didn't manage it quite right, so now we're going to have to manage it a little differently.
But this is the case in point that you have to test for multiple factors before you assume that certain things are going to be better for an environment. Like, you know, introducing toads to eat an introduced beetle. You have to look at the potential consequences before you do what you think may be saving an environment.
Yep. You know what I think it's time to do?
What time is it?
I think it's time for Blair's Animal Corner.
She loves our creatures, great and small. Biped, millipede, no pet at all. You want to hear about animals? She's your girl. Except for giant pandas and squirrels. Then I'm
What you got, Blair?
I have the solution to climate change.
Oh my gosh! Why do we spend all this time talking about why it's trees?
It rests in males.
Oh,
Males.
Yes.
the solution.
Men.
Let me explain.
Yeah,
You
give
must.
Justin a big head here.
I know.
Even
Well,
if it was
excuse
the
me.
solution.
So let's talk about natural selection and climate change. This is a study from Queen Mary University of London. And they wanted to look at sexual selection as a potential buffer against climate change. So what they did is they took Indian meal moths, Plodia interpunctella. They established a male-based sex ratio population. That would be 3 males for every female. They called that strong competition amongst males. And then a female-based sex ratio of 1 male for every 3 females. Weak competition. Then they gradually increased the temperature that they were reared at by 2 degrees Celsius every other generation. It's a pretty big jump in temperature. As the temperature increased beyond the normal range for the moths, they showed declines in the number of eggs produced per female and also in the survival of offspring to adulthood. As you might expect, this is an unhealthy temperature for them. Less eggs, less survival. However, the populations kept with a male-based sex ratio were more resilient to increasing temperatures. They found production of offspring and survival rates were affected, but significantly less so than the female-biased populations. They extended the study by comparing females who are allowed to choose their mates with females who are only given a single option. So this is kind of a micro version of those populations. And they found that when females were able to choose their male, they also laid more eggs and had better offspring survival in increased temperatures. So this means that competitive mating systems help augment selection for, let's say, less picky genes in relation to temperature change. And so that creates better survival, more eggs, all from this competition of genes in this climate change scenario. So this sexual selection is creating a buffer. So at first when I read this, I was kind of like, well, duh. But
Right.
it's an interesting point because it's not just in a population selection will find life finds a way, you know. But this is specifically male dominated in this case. So and they do think that this could be extrapolated to most animal species with male competition and female selection. So the idea is that when females are selecting for males within a species, the more males you have, the better chance that the female has to make a selection of a male that has the better genes. So the question is, first of all, how are the females identifying which male has the kind of temperature flexibility in his genes? Or is it just a numbers game? Does it just mean that because there's more options, some of them are surviving? But my other question is, what does this mean for temperature-dependent, sex-determined species? So like turtles, for example, where warmer temperatures create more females. So now we're going to have a female bias system
where there's more female competition,
where male biases provide buffers for climate change. That's a problem. So if we know that, but this is the good news of this, right? If we know that, then that's an opportunity for conservationists to step in. And when they are, hold on. And when they are already trying to even out the gender ratios for these species where this is happening, now maybe they're going to try to bias slightly towards the male so that they can push that temperature-dependent, sex-determined range up in response to climate change.
Here's an idea. Maybe that sex-determined gender ratio has worked in the past. Maybe it's there for a reason in that species. I mean, maybe
that in that species.
So Justin, for example, in turtles, their natural occurring ratio is 50-50. But as a result of climate change, it is skewing more and more and more female. That is the problem. So the reason that conservationists are stepping in is they're trying to bring the ratio back to the natural percentage, because what's happening is females are not finding males. They're not laying fertile eggs. So if they now know that a male bias potentially could help them adjust quicker to climate change, this could actually potentially help conservation programs.
So I'm just for a conversation point here for a second. I mean, when is there no competition for mates? I mean,
well, so
isn't there always? Haven't we talked about the factor that there's always going to be some amount of choosiness from females, and even if there are a large number of males, there's sometimes the dominant ones, and then the more beta males, or this is. In a moth species, I mean, it's a moth. You have some that give off more pheromone and some that give off less pheromone, right? There's a spectrum of whatever signal they give off. But the females there's always going to be competition, I would imagine.
Right. So it's also a question of the type of competition. So there's different species where females mate with every single male they come across, and it all gets sorted out internally.
Right.
That may or may not have an impact as a result of climate change.
Right.
So this was just based on I'm going to pick one and mate with him, and it is that one.
And when there are more males, there is a higher probability that a female is going to make a good choice.
Right.
Because there will be more. I mean, we're talking about population gene frequency within a population. So this adaptability to temperature change, there are going to just be more of those males available in the population.
Right.
So that increases the chances.
Right. So that was the initial study where they had these big populations of the moths. But the second iteration of the study, where they just took a single female and put them with one male or put them with multiple males, they overall found more eggs and better survival as a result of that, which means potentially there might actually be some selection for the ability to survive in that new climate somewhere in there. Potentially.
I wonder what they are selecting for. And then I still want to say this is insects. This is a moth. Yeah. And the idea that these researchers are saying that this is going to, a competitive species with these competitive mating systems across the animal kingdom. Come on.
Yes. So their exact quote was, "Our results indicate that these competitive mating systems can play an important role in determining response to new environments, whereas species where there is less competition for mates are likely to be less able to adapt to new conditions, which is basically all that you said, which is just
Right.
there's more likelihood to express new genes if there's more competition. So I agree with you. I think that it's not an indicator of response to climate change as a result of mate competition across genera. That's not what we saw here. What we saw is a reason to examine that in other things.
Yeah.
And to see if we can ultimately, what I see is an opportunity to identify what could help resilience in other species.
What could help resilience? Yes, I foresee this as the next reality TV show. We put one female woman on an island with three.
Oh no, we're not moths.
How do we adapt to climate change?
But here's another study about an invertebrate and how they're exactly like us, perhaps or not at all. You ready for this one?
We'll see.
Okay.
A new study found that male fruit flies find copulation and specifically ejaculation to be inherently rewarding. It showed that the rewarding nature of ejaculation is conserved. And they were able to figure this out by actually isolating the act of ejaculation as separate from copulation. This is really interesting. The methodology here is what got me about this story. So they genetically engineered fruit flies so that they could activate particular neurons with light.
Okay, so optogenetics we're dealing with, right?
Yes. They used flies where the neurons expressing the neuropeptide corazonin, CRZ, could be switched on by exposure to red light. Earlier studies showed that CRZ neurons in flies in their abdomen trigger the release of sperm and seminal fluid. So by shining this red light on them, they could make ejaculation happen with nothing else going on.
Hopefully there was a little warning.
Yeah, I know. Laid down some paper towels or something. But they were able to then isolate the reward associated with ejaculation away from everything else. So they wanted to see what parts of the mating process were the rewarding thing that fruit flies were following when they were seeking out this behavior. Was it the pheromones? Was it the actions that males performed? Was it the very last step of mating, which was the ejaculation? And so they used an arena, they call it, in which one side emitted red light to trigger this optogenetic activation of the CRZ neurons and therefore ejaculation. And then they had a non-red light area. It was just normal.
Seriously, a red light district?
Yes, red light, you know. And yeah, sense of humor here for sure. And tracked where male flies wanted to spend their time. They found that the flies showed a strong preference for the red light, which means that going in there and having that response was in itself a rewarding experience. Then they were like, oh no, was it just the red light? Did they just like red light? Is that the thing? So instead, next, they trained the flies to associate red light and ejaculation with a particular odor. Then they tested whether the flies preferred the scent that reminded them of that past experience of ejaculation, and they did. So after a few days, they repeated the activation. The fruit fly males had high levels of neuropeptide F in their brains, which is what the males who actually got to mate with females also had in their brains. When those males were given the choice between liquid food, this is where it gets crazy, and liquid food spiked with alcohol, they preferred the non-alcoholic food. But control flies that did not experience ejaculation,
they liked the alcohol.
They wanted the alcohol.
Wow.
So they were looking for a response from the reward center is the idea here. So they say, our studies suggest that the state of the animal, i.e. undergoing successful mating or being rejected, affects the motivation to consume drug rewards, which is a little bit of a stretch. But an analogy for reward states can be proposed in which a high reward state is illustrated by a full reservoir and a low state by an empty reservoir. One can speculate that vulnerability to addiction is related to the size of the reservoir that needs to be filled, or to different sensitivity to changes in the reward levels. So they're saying because they had not experienced the reward centers as a result of ejaculation, they were craving this reward center to be filled with something else. And so they filled that hole within themselves with alcohol.
With alcohol.
Yes.
So according to these researchers, the addiction is a hole that cannot be filled.
Well,
Oh,
it sounds
but
like it can be. Yeah.
It can be.
It just seems what I saw as an overlying. I mean, this is an extreme extrapolation. This is also anthropomorphism to the max, but it kind of sounds like this idea that that depression comes almost from a state of a lack of rewards or a malfunctioning in the reward center, and so you chase for all these, so you can see how this could be extrapolated into this idea that people seek the response in their brain as a result of drugs or alcohol because they are lacking other reward responses in other parts of their life. So that's kind of the leap you could make from this. But just in the real science here, we've found that not just the act of mating, but actually the completion, the kind of the goal there is to move your DNA, right? And to propagate new life and pass on your genes. And so apparently the act of mating, the reward doesn't come until you have completed that goal, right?
Or
Which is
for
why
a fruit fly.
if I was a fruit fly,
It just applies to fruit flies.
if I was a male fruit fly, I would need that last bit to get the reward response in my brain, because that's the reason.
Yeah, let's remove logic completely from our human brains for a moment and realize that we enjoy orgasming despite any form of pre-planned thought or reasoning. It's one of those mechanisms that's in the brain that creates life replicating.
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
Our brain knows that we're too dumb to be in charge of our heart beating. It knows that our breaths need to be going on their own cycle without us consciously putting in any effort into it. When we get hungry, we're stuck with a little pang, a little irritation that makes us want to go and devour something. These aren't things that's like, I haven't eaten in 3 days. Gosh, it's really slept my mind. No, your brain, your brain will create pain and anxieties and stressors, and it will reward for doing its bidding. So the orgasm, I think, is likely going to be across the animal kingdom as one of those mechanisms that the brain uses to control the body and to get it to do its will.
And we can continue to think that we are more complex than a fruit fly.
Well, we do. We hack it. Sometimes we hack it twice a day.
The researchers here are indicating that there are extreme similarities in the reward centers of a fruit fly and other animals, even mammals. And so they're seeing a lot of parallels here in this study to related studies that have been done with, shall we say, quote unquote, higher life forms. And so they think that this could be a door opening to further studies on this, and potentially this could lead us to some really good science that could help some people. Who knows?
Absolutely. And I do know that there have been, there are psychotherapy hypotheses being put forward in this way for human drug addiction treatment, that it's not treating the addiction per se, but treating the psychological lack that somebody has, that they can't find satisfaction in life without seeking these other substances that then have a negative impact on their life eventually. So is there something else that can be a replacement?
Free
Yeah.
brochures on
And-
self-donations of orgasms every night. I think that's
Yeah.
it.
Well,
Really
actually, that's what I was
right.
going to say is that people don't want to talk about it because it's taboo or it's funny, but sexual health and mental health, there's a link there. And
Yeah.
and that's something that needs to be explored. And I understand that it can be taboo in a lot of ways and people don't want to talk about it in an open forum, but this is exactly why. This is why sex ed and health ed and mental health are all kind of inextricably linked, and it might need some more focus.
And it's an interesting point now. It's an interesting question as to what's going to happen in areas of the world where there is a big population difference between the sexes. So China and India, for instance, have a huge problem where they have a generation with way more men than women. And many of those men, they're not finding companionship. They are not finding other people. And so how is that, how are they going to satisfy that aspect of this, of the human psyche? So there are some very interesting questions about what's going to happen socially, culturally in these countries where the sex ratio is so dramatically tilted.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So this all ties into some very interesting questions. You bring it up, public health, sex ed, all
Absolutely.
this stuff. It does tie in together. So much that fruit flies can teach us.
Yes, absolutely. And I have one last quick and adorable, or perhaps really gross story about the latrine blowfly. Aw, they're a beautiful little fly that lives in dead things. Yeah.
Or in latrines.
Yes,
right?
in latrines, but they are actually famous as part of forensic science. So they pop up in cadavers and in dead animals at a very specific time after death. And so they're actually kind of a smoking gun when people are trying to date dead bodies that they discover. So the latrine blowfly hangs out in these corpses often. And something that we learned if you read Mary Roach's book Stiff, I think was the one where you hear all about what happens to a decomposing body. It actually gets really hot in there. And so the latrine blowfly has an adorable little adaptation. We sweat, dogs pant, other animals anoint, they lick all over so that there's evaporative cooling. These guys, they blow bubbles out of their stomach juices. Oh, so cute.
Wait, what?
Yeah. So they blow bubbles out of their mouth with their stomach juices, and then they suck them back in. So as fluid moves out, evaporation occurs. It lowers the fluid temperature. Then the fly moves the cooled droplet back in, cooling off the body temperature to the fly. When they re-ingest the cooled droplet, they lowered their body temperature by up to a whole degree Celsius.
Wow.
Yeah. So the flies also blew more bubbles as air temperature increased, but fewer in humid surroundings, because if it's moist out and they're blowing little water droplets out of their mouth, they won't have evaporative cooling. So they adjust to the outside temperature and humidity. But this is a neat little adaptation for them to do some evaporative cooling.
Wow. So yeah, it's similar to humid parts of the world where it's hard to get cool. They have to change their tactic in that situation.
Yeah. So that's how they keep cool in those cadavers. They just blow adorable little bubbles out of stomach acid. So cute.
So cute and adorable. So adorable. Nope.
No.
Nope.
Super
not
gross, actually.
really.
Gross.
Yep. Super gross. Thanks for that. Thanks a lot. Some really cool news as we come into the quick science stories at the end of the show. Researchers at UC Berkeley have visualized the structure of telomerase. Do you know what that means?
What?
Do you know what this means? They visualize.
I can make my shoelace caps last longer.
Well, maybe it will lead to intelligently designed drugs that will allow researchers, to make drugs that will then fix your telomeres, yes, and let them last longer.
I'm gonna live forever.
That's right. That's right. I want to live forever. So the structure of telomerase, actually, nobody's known exactly what it looks like for forever. It's been guessed at what it looks like, but now researchers have actually been able to figure out the structure of this telomerase enzyme, which cuts at the end of the telomeres and makes them shorter. And knowing the structure of telomerase will allow the designing of drugs to affect diseases related to telomerase, or potentially lead to drugs for aging. So the researchers say the best previous images of human telomerase only had a resolution of 30 angstroms. We were able to get about 7 to 8 angstroms resolution using cryo-electron microscopy. When I got to the point where I could see all the subunits, we had 11 protein subunits in total. It was a moment of, wow, this is how they all fit together. I love science and the wow moment. Science and the wow moment is pretty awesome. So drugs for aging, they may be on the way thanks to UC Berkeley scientists and their cryo-electron imaging, what they're doing there. And then if you've ever wondered, how kids can just get up and run and play, and they seem to have all this energy, and their muscles don't seem to get as tired.
They each contain a supernova.
Right. They don't seem to have the same problem with muscle soreness afterwards either, right? After a long run, or kids just have this, I don't know, this behavioral elasticity that adults who don't train as endurance athletes don't have, right? Normal adult, you're like, I got to sit down. The kids are still bing, 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 bouncing off the walls.
And I think I've told this story before. I will bounce off the walls with my kids. I will run around the playground and quit like I'm their age. And I can do it even at my tender age of 45.
But then you hurt afterwards.
But the next day, that's the recovery part, is the hardest thing. The next day, I am a frozen plank of muscles that refuse to obey commands, and they're up and running around again like nothing happened.
Yes. And so this, in a study that was published in the Frontiers in Physiology, Exercise Physiology, this last week, it published on the 24th of April, some French researchers, French and Australian researchers, they looked at 12 kids prepubertal, so before they had reached puberty, not trained in any sport.
Is that a real word?
Pre-puberty. Yes.
I didn't know prepubertal was a word though. That's
12. They looked at 12 or 13 endurance male athletes and 12 men who don't train in anything. So the kids and the untrained men, they were chosen for doing less than 4 hours of activity a week. And the endurance athletes, these are competitive male athletes who train regularly. And they tested them on an endurance test and a strength test. And they looked at various aspects of oxygen uptake, heart rate, blood lactate concentration, which is a measure of the metabolites that the muscle is using and what's left over after aerobic exercise. They found out that kids basically are on par with endurance athletes. There's something about kids' muscles. They do not build up lactate. They recover more quickly. Their VO2, their oxygen uptake, recovers more quickly after exercise than adults who don't train. Kids, something about the physiology of children, they are on par with endurance athletes who train on purpose.
I would chalk this up to our ancestral upbringing, you know, to keep stride for stride with the adults when running nomadically after game and the hunt and gathery times of the yesteryear. I bet children had to be pretty athletic. And
Well,
for
the
those
slow ones, they got picked off. So
well, and that's
Right.
right.
And so maybe this is some aspect of childhood survival, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
selection, yeah.
And then once you're 45 or whatever, you know, we don't really, you know, Justin, you're kind of slowing down the pack. The
Yeah. Yeah, we didn't make it to 45 back
every
then.
morning and run all day, but yeah, you can, every other day it seems you're like telling us we should camp here for another night. I don't know if
Yeah, that's why you are a man at 13, because you only lived to 30.
Yeah. Well, science says kids actually are that good. Kids, they're better than you.
Yeah.
Oh man, don't tell them.
Naturally.
They'll never live it down.
They will never live it down. And I think that does it for me in the stories. Justin, do you have any more stories?
Last
before we
story
go?
here is by recent research by researchers has revealed the mechanism that regulates our body heat and protects us against cold shock. And it is those GD cells. Gamma delta T cells are usually found at barrier sites in the body to guard the body from infection. But in this current study, scientists found a special population that lives inside brown fat cells. So the discovery, so what they did was they took these out of mice. They took these T cells that they found in the brown fat cells, and the brown fat cells is the fat cells that burn. A lot of your fat stores energy. Your brown fat cells actually burn it up to create body heat and to expel energy, right? It's the part that's using energy. So they took these GD cells out of the brown fat cells and mice, and the mice were like shivering at room temperature. When they put them into a cold temperature, which they normally would be able to handle, they died. This is Professor Lynch. This is this is associate professor in immunology at Trinity College Dublin, Lydia Lynch, saying, surprisingly, we found that the immune cells in fat respond to cold temperatures. They play an integral part in regulating thermogenesis by turning on the burning of white fat or by stimulating the conversion of white fat into brown fat, which then generates the heat required to keep us warm in the cold. This heat generation happens when the lipids in the white fat are burned up. And when this occurs, weight loss is the biggest side effect. So aside from figuring out that which will allow us to live longer and that which we need for our mental health, we may have also found a way to be skinny in the future.
I just want more GDT cells so I'm not always cold.
Yeah, that's
I'm wondering if the stereotype that women are always colder than men. I wonder if they have less.
Here, and I have glaucoma. You don't need glaucoma anymore. It's California. Okay, then I just am cold all the time.
Yeah, I'm always cold. Give me some T cells.
Some GDT cells. Give me those GDT cells right now. Yeah, I'll stop yelling into the mic.
Because, those GDT cells, they're listening, or whatever gives them and takes them away. It's listening. We want them.
Yeah. And conversely,
and
conversely, there are people who have the opposite need, which is they're burning through too many cells or too much of their energy too quickly, which can happen with some immunodepressed syndromes and such. So that there may be also a need for folks who want to be gaining weight and want to be able to maintain their weight, as we may actually need to do as we decide to live longer. Sometimes maintaining a healthy body weight can actually become an issue much later in life than you are now, Blair. But you may actually, want less of these GDT cells at some point.
Right. to keep the body fat on you.
Yeah, we'll just manage the ecosystem. It'll be fine.
Just manage it. That's
What
right.
could go wrong?
What could go wrong? Well, if you're listening to TWIS, I hope nothing has gone wrong for you this evening or day, wherever you are, because it's science, everyone. We had a great show tonight. We have come to the end of our show. I hope nobody's shivering. I hope you're all nice and toasty warm. I hope you've got some GDT cells. I hope you've got an eye on your telomerase. I hope that you're not, I don't know, not on Uranus. I don't know. Anyway, we're done with the show. We had a wonderful show. Great interview with Dr. Sarita Menon from Smore Magazine. Once again, want to thank her and let everyone know smoremagazine.com is where you can go for more information about that. It's time for shout outs and thank yous. Thank you to Identity4 for recording the show. Thank you to Brandon for simulcasting to Facebook. Thank you to Fada for help with show notes on YouTube and also with social media. And thank you to everyone out there who is in our chat room, the chat room that is connected with this show, and also the YouTube chat room and over on Facebook. Hi there. Thanks for watching live and thanks for being part of the conversation. And now I'd like to thank our Patreon sponsors. Thank you to Paul Disney, G. Burton Lattimore, Richard Onimus, Ken Hayes, Harrison Prathers, Charlene Davidson Henry, Joshua Fury, Andy Groh, Steve DeBell, Alex Wilson, Tony Steele, Ed Dyer, Craig Landon, John Ratnaswamy, Mark Mazzaros, Jack Gary, Matthew Litwin, Jason Roberts, Bill K, Bob Calder, Time Jumper 319, Kyle Washington, Eric Knapp, Richard Brian Condren, Sean Bryant, Sarah Chavis, Jacqueline Boyster, Richard Porter, Artyom, Rick Ramus, Paul, John McKee, Jason Olds, Brian Carrington, Christopher Dreyer, Lisa Slazewski, Jim Drapeau, Greg Riley, Sean Lamb, Ben Rothig, Steve Lesseman, Kurt Larson, Robert Aston, Rudy Garcia, Marjorie, Gary S., Robert, Greg Briggs, Brendan Minish, Christopher Rappin, Flying Out, Aaron Luthen, Matt Sutter, Mark Hessenflow, Kevin Parachan, Byron Lee, E.O., Mark Tyrone Fong, and Keith Corsell. Thank you for all of your support on Patreon. And if you are interested in finding out more about Patreon, you can click the Patreon link at twist.org or go directly to patreon.com/thisweekinscience. Also, remember, you can go to twist.org to find out more information about TWIS, and that's where you can send people if people you know would like to find out more about This Week in Science. On next week's show, I'm not going to be here, but the show will go on because Blair and Justin are going to keep the science running on schedule. That's right, the science train, boop, boop, it's running, and they're going to keep it going. And we will be live. They will be live online at 8 p.m. Pacific time on twist.org/live, where you can join our chat room and the conversation there and watch live. You can also do the same at our YouTube channel, twist.org/YouTube, or you can always find the past episodes archived at YouTube or on twist.org or on our Facebook channel.
Thank you for enjoying the show. TWIS is also available as a podcast. Just Google This Week in Science in your iTunes directory, or if you have a mobile type device, simply look for TWIS, the number 4 Droid app in your Android marketplace, or This Week in Science in anything Apple marketplacey.
For more information on anything you heard here today, show notes will be available on our website. That's at www.twist.org, where you can also make comments and start conversations with the hosts or other listeners.
Or you can contact us directly. Email Kirsten at thisweekinscience.com, Justin at twistminion@gmail.com, or Blair at blairbaz@twist.org. Just be sure to put TWIS, TWIS, somewhere in the subject line, or your email will be spam filtered into oblivion. You can also hit us up on the Twitter, where we are at TWIS Science, at Dr. Kiki, at Jacksonfly, and at Blair's Menagerie. We love your feedback. If there's a topic you would like us to cover or address, a suggestion for an interview, please let us know.
We'll be back here next week, and we hope you'll join us again for more great science news.
And if you have learned anything from the show, remember,
It's all in your head.
This week in science. This week in science. This week in science. This week in science, it's the end of the world. So I'm setting up shop, got my banner unfurled. It says the scientist is in, I'm gonna sell my advice. Show them how to stop the robots with a simple device. I'll reverse global warming with a wave of my hand. And all it'll cost you is a couple of grand. This week's science is coming your way. So everybody listen to what I say. I use the scientific method for all that it's worth. And I'll broadcast my opinion all over the earth. Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 I've got one disclaimer and it shouldn't be news. That what I say may not represent your views, but I've done the calculations and I've got a plan. If you listen to the science, you may just yet understand that we're not trying to threaten your philosophy. We're just trying to save the world from jeopardy. And This Week in Science is coming your way. So everybody listen to everything we say. And if you use our method instead of rolling a die, we may rid the world of toxoplasma. Got the eye. Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 I've got a laundry list of items I want to address. From stopping global hunger to dredging Loch Ness. I'm trying to promote more rational thought, and I'll try to answer any question you've got. So how can I ever see the changes I seek when I can only set up shop 1 hour a week? This Week in Science is coming your way. You better just listen to what we say, and if you learned anything from the words that we said, then please just remember it's all in your head. Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in 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 Science.
And that ends another episode of This Week in Science.
Kiki, why is your cursor so huge?
Why is my cursor so huge? Is it huge? Oh, it's gigantic. That's funny.
Yeah.
Probably because everything's giant. I've got a massive screen that I'm working off of in front of me. And so it's pretty funny because I haven't figured out how I can manage the windows within it really well. And I guess it's showing off my cursor as being huge. Humongous cursor. Curses.
Noodles wants to know which is better, PayPal or Patreon?
It depends. Patreon did not end up adding all of the the weird charges that they were talking about doing back in December. So it's half of one. You know, PayPal has its normal percentage that it takes off of every transaction. But PayPal has the same thing, has a percentage they remove as well for the platform fees. So, you know, it's up to you.
Mm-hmm.
It is up to you which one you prefer.
I mean, Patreon has
Patreon-
kickbacks depending on what.
Exactly. Patreon has kickbacks at various levels. Like if you supported a level that I say your name on the show, then I say your name on the show. I don't read off the PayPal donors, but if people on PayPal really asked me for it, I would probably add their names to the list too, because I just want to say thank you to people who help support the show. That's really the key. But some people don't like Patreon, so they preferred the PayPal thing. And for some people, the credit cards with PayPal are easier. So it's really up to you. So I don't know, but
it's also if you're looking for a one-time or a recurring, there are recurring PayPal, but if you're doing a one-time, it sounds like PayPal's probably the one.
Yeah, one-time donation, PayPal's probably the way to go. Recurring donation, Patreon. And you can, it's a little community kind of thing. And I send little notes out every once in a while. And it's usually every long while. I need to be better at managing the community. I need to be better at managing my own time. This is the struggle. My struggle in my life is time
it's
management.
an email? It's like an email mailer that you send out?
Well, no, it's like in the Patreon.
Oh, it's the feed.
The feed. Well, I put out, I can send messages, I can send emails through Patreon to donors, to supporters. I can also send, put messages on the Patreon feed. I can make posts and messages that go out to the public. I can also specify them for people who pledge at certain levels or at all the levels. Like one of the things I do right now is I put our audio files. I've made a Patreon RSS feed.
Ooh.
So, and I make that available to supporters. And so, if you don't want to download the normal TWIS RSS feed and you want to go through Patreon, you can download it there if you are supporting us.
So does that mean you are looking for silly content for the Patreon people?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't know that. I'll put that on my back burner.
Yes, and maybe I can give you maybe I can give you the login information. Patreon now has this. I'm just opening it for the first time.
I'd rather you vet all of my musings. I'm just thinking about an occasional blog post or something like that I could write that you could just send out to everybody. It's just like, here's something fun sciencey that happened to me today, or something like that.
Mm-hmm. And it could be the beginning of a newsletter.
Yeah, newsletter stuff. That's something that I could say that I'm gonna work on. See if it happens or not. But I would also want you to look at it first. So I'll try to send you some stuff. That's fun.
Yeah, that would be fun. But I was going to say this new Patreon app, they have this Lens app, and it's supposed to make it a lot easier for creators to talk with their patrons.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, so it's like I think it allows you to do things like, record a video or do, do stuff like take a picture and put a post up from your phone. So if you're on the go.
That's really cool.
Yeah. I have yet to play with it. So I just downloaded it, and I need to remember what my login information is so that I can actually log in.
Oh yeah. Oh, Identity 4. Newsletter, eh? I know where that ends up.
TWIS Magazine.
So that's a pretty high Patreon level, I would have to say.
Yeah.
We'd have to be getting a good amount of money in here to actually put out a magazine.
Yeah.
That's a lot of man hours or woman hours.
Yeah, it would be all women hours. It would be all women hours. There would not be very many man hours.
Okay, fair enough. Touche.
Dedicated to that. Actually, I take that back.
I feel like a blog post is something you would absolutely do.
Like a writing thing. Like I was already thinking tonight, because I missed 2 stories. One that was just breaking, and one that I saw on Twitter and I haven't really vetted. Having to do with footprints. 2 different stories this week about ancient footprints that were found.
Oh yeah, I can't believe the sloth that you didn't do the sloth.
I didn't do the one with the sloth, but there was another one that was that's also interesting because it's 3.5 million years old, and it's showing a bipedal ancestor or cousin or whatever.
Yeah.
That was that. So there's like a lot of like, but and then we had the one that was up in the British Columbia little isle. Like it would be kind of sort of fun to do a just footprints. I was thinking like do a segment or a thing that was just on the footprints of humanity, and what those different footprints have told us. You know, there's lots of fun stuff that could be done in an extra long day.
Right? An extra long day. Add a little more time, and then we will do it.
we actually, Minions, we don't really need your money. What we really need you to do is take a few hours out of each week, or if you've got an hour that you're not doing anything with this one day, and
Give it
just
to us.
send it to us.
Send us your time.
That would really help a lot.
I would like the money to pay for things as well. Sorry. Noodles, thank you so much for donating on PayPal, and if you join on Patreon, thank you. Thank you for that. I just saw your post. Thank you. Yeah. Ulysses. What if somebody finds your cards? No,
that's Ed saying to Ulysses.
Oh, Ed uses the cards?
Or uses the Last Pass vault.
Last Pass is great. And there's another one as well that what do I use? I can't even pass. There it is. What's it called? It's called something. It's got a key.
Key pass?
It's pass something. I don't know.
Yeah,
Robert Bigelow says the key pass or last pass.
Yeah, I don't think I have last.
I have all these devices that remember my passwords, so I never have to. And then something happens on one of them.
Yeah.
That I happen to be on, and it's not there.
Yeah.
And I reset the password, and then I realize, oh gosh, every other device in my existence, I'm going to now have to go through this again, because now I have to. It'll try to auto log me in, and it'll be wrong, and it'll be like, "You're not you," and I'm like, "Oh, me! But I just have the other devices."
Yeah, see, that's what I just wrote in this chat room too. I just let my computer store them, and when my computer updates, I have to recover and reset them all.
Yes.
That's yep.
Oh my God.
I used to write them down. I used to have a file. I used to do all sorts of nah.
Nah.
Eh.
Meh, who needs it? Just
I know who I
recover
am.
all.
I know all my like security questions, so
Yeah,
figure it out.
So does that hacker too.
Nah, man, they don't know my
Hacker down the
first
street.
pet's name or my first model of car or what my high school
That's the car
mascot
you're
was. They
driving
don't
now,
know those
isn't it?
things. No,
Because that car's old enough.
rude.
Because she's
No,
gonna
actually,
say
it's
yes
not.
here on the show.
It's not old enough to be my first car.
And it just looks it. So
Rude.
no, I've seen your car. It's not rude. Mine's no exception. I actually have now. I have one of those emergency battery jumpers plugged into my power outlet in the car, so it's always trickle charging when I drive. So the odd every other month or once a month, depending, when my car battery just fails because there's some sort of like I've been charging the thing, and so then I can jump it, and then it'll be happy again for a while, and then it's this. So I'm in the same boat. I'm not judging.
My car runs fine. It just has a rust hole in the hatch.
My actually favorite thing about your car is that the clock runs fast.
Oh, it doesn't.
Yeah.
It not
It
just
has
it
its own
runs
time.
fast. Yeah, it runs. It's in a
does what it
different
wants.
universe. It's in a space-time continuum somehow where
That's
one
an
day
odd
it'll
one.
gain 3 minutes, and the next day it'll gain 7, and the next day
I've
it'll
never
gain
seen
1.
a digital clock that couldn't tell time.
No, it
I'm just
can't.
amazed by it.
I think
It's-
maybe it's being triggered by gamma rays, by cosmic rays.
Mhm, mhm,
The
mhm.
electronics are being.
Car does
struck
look
by
like it's been
cosmic
through a
rays.
radioactive.
Yeah.
All right. I'm stuck with it a while here, so I gotta make it work.
Robert Bigelow says his
I
clock
wanna
just seems to run fast in his car because the car is so slow.
Ooh,
yeah.
relativity.
I gotta make Sweet Pepper last 2 more years. So
Sweet Pepper.
her name is Pepper.
Pepper. Oh, Pepper. Oh, Pepper. I'm going to
Yep.
start I'm closing some windows here. Oh, I just saw Allison Coffin, who is a neuroscientist who studies hearing at the University of Washington, Vancouver. She just posted in Twitter this evening an interesting study. There is a study that suggests one of the risky behaviors connected with drinking at concerts is hearing loss, because you're more likely to stand close to speakers when you drink too much.
Because you're drunk. That's funny.
Being drunk can lead to hearing loss because
Being drunk can lead to a lot of bad decisions.
bad decisions in general. That's right.
Goodness.
Yes. I love science Twitter. Science Twitter. Oh gosh, I wonder if I can show you pictures of Kai's science experiment.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I'm just wondering if that's possible. Kai's been we did a microbiology experiment. Oh yeah, there it goes. I'm going to gross you out. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Are you ready? This is the gross out time. So we did a science experiment comparing family bacteria.
Nice.
Yes. And so, okay, we have the plates, these we have, oh, nope, I don't want to go that way. I want to go this way. So this was Kai's plate, and the kind of white area, this is the quadrant that contained the nasal sample from inside the nose. And then we have the the quadrant above it is the that was the iPad that he uses.
Oh, yucky.
This bottom left quadrant was his finger. And then the top left quadrant was from the toothbrush.
Yuck.
Yes. And then, so that was his. And
Why
then
is it yuck? This is
biology. This is
Yeah,
normal.
Yeah.
And this is Marshall's tray. So he had a very kind of similar looking white nasal sample. He had his iPhone, had a few different bacterial colonies, a couple that look similar, but a couple of kind of different ones. And then bottom left was his finger, very monocultural. I thought that was pretty interesting, that it didn't seem to have he didn't seem to have a lot of diversity on his finger. And then his toothbrush, again, monoculture. Like there's not a lot of bacteria in there, but there's bacteria, but just not a lot of diversity again. So that's Marshall. And then here's me.
Oh my
this
God.
This was my nose, bottom left.
Totally different.
Totally different. My phone, my Android phone, a little bit of bacteria, not too much. My finger, lots of diversity.
What?
And then my toothbrush. So looking at it, like I was thinking, mine is very different from Marshall's, but I think more similar to Kai's.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But I think, but I don't know. I thought Kai's nose seemed
the
a lot more.
noses. Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought it was just really interesting looking at the differences of, and then trying to figure out like how we can explain it. And then we did just a random sampling where we had what was it? We had the TV remote control. It was a TV remote control, the front doorknob, which is brass, which is kind of antibacterial. This was a light switch in the kitchen. Looks very much like the finger bacteria. Yeah, it looks like the fingers. And then our cat, Stella.
What did you swab on her?
We just swabbed her. Just put a swab.
Where?
On her back, in her fur.
In her fur. That's very
In
interesting.
her fur. Yeah. So anyway, I thought it was very interesting. And one thing that again, even though our devices had bacteria on them, they still were not as dirty as our fingers.
Yeah, which is not what the studies that we've reported on have said. They've said that they're like dirtier than a toilet seat, but
yeah.
Maybe you have a very clean device household.
Possibly. Yeah. So anyway, those are our bacteria, and that's and we're playing with bacteria here in our house. It's pretty fun. I'm constantly taking my phone and like rubbing on things. I'm like, let me rub that off. I'm just getting my germs all over my clothes, wiping it off, cleaning it off constantly. Yes.
I'm sure my phone swab was very different when I was a zookeeper than now.
Yeah. Right? Probably.
Yeah. Well, I had an OtterBox. I had like this super protective iPhone case that I left in my locker when I was.
You left an otter in a box in your locker when you were a zookeeper?
No. So yeah. So I would change my phone case in between being at work and leaving because like I'm sure there was poop splash hitting my phone all the time.
Yeah.
So.
Ew. Yeah. Gross.
Yeah. But still, I'm sure a lot of it transferred. Because you change and you touched your belt that was also splattered with poop, and then pick up your phone, and then it's unavoidable. But
yeah, and our cat's an indoor cat, so I'm sure she's just got our germs and we've got her germs because she doesn't go anywhere else. Yeah. Ulysses is asking, how did I get the Petri trays and how did I get it to grow? It was pretty easy, actually. There's a good friend of ours for Kai's birthday. He ordered a Steve Spangler science kit for Kai, and this was in last month's science kit. But if you were interested in doing something like this yourself, you just go online to like an educational website where teachers can buy supplies, and you can buy kits like these. You can buy a set of Petri dishes. You can buy the nutritional base, which is agar. AGAR is how it's spelled, and it usually contains a certain set of nutrients to keep bacteria alive. And so something that was interesting that I didn't think about prior to kind of tweeting about this yesterday I tweeted, I was like, oh, look at our pictures. Do any microbiologists want to identify bacteria? And one person got back to me and said, what kind of agar do you have?
Right.
What kind of
LB, there's like different kinds. It's going to determine what can go there.
Speaking of the cats. Yeah. And so the nutrients in the agar determine what can grow. And so, and I was like, I have no idea. This came out of a kit, so I didn't control it. But it's agar and Petri dishes are not hard to come by. And the methodology is pretty simple to sample bacteria and let it grow. So it's a fun process to kind of take a look at it and see how much is there, what kind of diversity is there, or if you can figure out what species are there, or at least genuses. Like somebody pointed out on Twitter last night, it was cool. Someone like pointed an arrow at one little clump of bacteria, and they were like, "Oh, it looks like you've got bacillus." I'm like, yay, disease-causing bacteria. Awesome.
But actually, it'd be fun to take everything under the microscope and see if the morphology of the colony is, just because it looks similar, is it the same thing? Let's put it under the microscope and let's find out.
Let's find out. Exactly. Yeah. So that's the next step. So the dishes are there still. We haven't thrown them away yet. Got to pull out a microscope and see what we can see. See what we can see. Yeah. I hope I didn't gross you all out too much.
I mean,
it's science. Come on.
That was not the grossest thing we talked about today. So
no.
I was actually streaking
Were you streaking plates?
Yeah,
Yes.
I was doing that today as a control step to look for contaminate. If there's a contamination, to go back and look if it was present at this stage in the process.
That's cool. That's cool. Yeah. What's the and
it
then
is probably one of my favorite things to do too, because it's like you said, very easy, and when you've got a whole big stack of them, it's very meditative.
right.
There's like a little Zen art to the squiggly lines that you lay down there.
And there are so many microbiologists.
Huh?
You know?
I just made up a word, but there are tons of microbiologists who actually streak their plates with certain bacteria in certain designs, and they create art. You know,
Yeah.
they make images out of bacteria, and that's fun. Super.
Oh, I've got to ravel a plan to come up with something like that.
Yes. Make the TWIS logo in bacteria.
Yeah.
The head of the lab will be like, what is going on here?
How does everything keep coming up with the same?
Why does it just keep saying
my
TWIS?
technique. You just go like twist and down over here, then you do a big up and down squiggly line, and then I like to do a little dot for isolation effect, and then one more last big squiggly streak at the end. It's perfect.
Yeah, that's perfect. Let's see. So I'm not going to be here next week.
That's right.
Yeah,
we just need a new run sheet, and then
I'll make a new run sheet. I leave town on Tuesday, midday.
Will you be textable?
I should be.
Okay, just in case I have a
going
brain fart about
location, or
I am going to be at in Monterey Bay, California.
so close.
So close yet so far.
Yeah, it's one of those for me, but it's right next door to Blair.
I'm very excited, and you guys, this meeting that I'm going to be honest and say this meeting has ratcheted up my imposter syndrome.
Oh no.
Massively. No, I have been invited to go to a workshop. It's one of several workshops that the Kavli Institute is organizing to get a view of the landscape of science communication and the challenges facing scientists and science communicators of all sorts, and to look at potential directions to go for solutions, to be able to direct the Kavli Institute maybe and other funding organizations in how they fund science communication projects in the future, in the solutions that they want driven forward. I'm going to be sitting in a workshop with a number of people from across the country who I respect very much in the science communication field. And I am very excited to be going. Yes. And I know that it's huge that I get to go to this, and I'm very excited, but it's one of those moments where you look at the list of attendees and go,
really? Because
I'm on this list. Wow.
I pointed this out before, Kirsten. I think I pointed this out.
I know. No, this is a human thing, though. This is I'm a self-critical person all the time, and this is my honest human moment.
I love the honesty, but I am somewhat revolted by the abject humility. There is not a human being on this earth who has reported on more science stories than you. Ever in the history of planet Earth, there's not another human being that has brought to the public more science stories directly than Kirsten Sanford. So I get, like, indulging yourself in a little bit of this humility glow. Woo! But be serious. you've brought more science than probably half the people coming. So
I have. I've done a lot.
yes,
It's true. And I know,
Yes.
and this is the, this is the issue with this psychological thing where
Mhm.
you doubt, even though I know what I have done in my life. It's like, really? But was that it's okay. It's okay. I got to work harder. I got to do more. Make more.
And I think one of the lessons though that we've learned in this TWIS track is that we're still doing it, and we're still doing it right, and
still enjoying doing
still
it.
enjoying it. But I mean,
Mhm.
there's been a lot of like, oh my gosh, Al Gore's creating this channel. They're going to be talking about science, and we're not part of it. How is that even possible? But then and then the shows that I watched, and I was like, oh, really? They're doing like some sort of like glossy production value with very little content. Again, I'm seeing this again. Like, wow, that's also missing the mark of just sitting down and having a conversation about science. Like so I mean, you know, there's that in the back of your mind though. Keep it there. Don't let go of it. Let that be the thing that you know walking into that room, that you've been where these people are contemplating going.
Yeah.
For a while.
Well, it was like the Science Talk conference. It was a lot of people who were like, science communication, that sounds like a thing that maybe I should be doing. Maybe I should go hear about that. And it's something that is really hard for a lot of people to fathom, and especially a lot of people who are entrenched in the scientific community have a hard time fathoming kind of even how to baseline attack it. So it's pretty cool that that it's something that you have devoted so much of your life to. But it comes back to what we were talking about at the beginning of the show about representation and seeing yourself in science. And if it's the fact that it's a woman, if it's the fact that it's a normal person, not some uptight person in a bow tie, if it's the fact that we're just talking about it. No, I'm saying the cartoon.
Bow tie in science.
I'm saying the cartoon of a man with glasses and a bow tie in a lab coat. This is like the stereotypical scientist, right? So like this idea that we're just having these normal conversations, and sometimes they're big, and sometimes they're small, and sometimes they're silly, and sometimes they're serious, and it's just.
And sometimes fly ejaculation can get you to talking about, bigger human issues.
Yeah. That's something that I think is not prevalent.
Yeah.
And it's what I absolutely love about doing this show. That it's just us talking about things that we find interesting, and other people, you know what? They also find it interesting, and that's great, but I would enjoy this conversation either way.
Yep. Yeah, but part of it, like you mentioned, the people from the scientific community who go, "Oh, this science communication, maybe I should be doing that." Yeah, that's part of it. Is we also help scientists communicate. We give them a forum. We get to interview them. We get to talk with them and be like, "Okay," and then Justin can go, "I got a crazy idea."
Yeah.
What about that?
That's a crazy idea. Sometimes they're quite sensible.
Sometimes they are quite sensible. Yes.
Yeah. So that's really exciting though, Kiki. I'm so happy. I can't wait to hear more about it.
I can't either. I'm very excited about this. I'm gonna have so many wonderful geeky conversations about science communication over a couple of days next week. It's gonna be awesome. Awesome possum. Yeah, and maybe partnerships and collaborations will come of it. Who knows? New friendships, maybe interviews for the show. Who knows?
That's awesome.
Yeah. Maybe just, a glass of bourbon.
Yeah, Kiki, you know what I'd like you to do as a producer, my captain of the show?
Mm.
Can we reach out to the Yahoo News people because they've got a section in there like you can look at the news of politics, you can look at world news, you can look at local news, you can look at sports news, you can look at science. And I guarantee you, Uranus stinks made it.
Oh,
but
sure.
probably nothing else for like 3 weeks has been posted in that section. And like,
oh, my dad sends me Yahoo News articles all the time that are science.
That's all of them.
Well,
it's all of them.
It's from it's often something that we reported on the show 3 weeks ago.
3 months.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I'm like, oh yeah, we talked about that.
Yeah, I remember once there was some cell phone driving while cell phone multitasking study that we reported on, and like 3 months later, I was in Los Angeles, and it was a front page blurb to a section B story was there, but it was months and months later. So like the speed at which we can get the information out, but it's just
they're not doing. They're just collecting stories from other places.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I'm looking at their science.
but
They're
not very
doing
many
anything.
of them.
I think, yeah.
Like not very many of them even. Like if you look at it, there's not even like
No,
it's not
yeah.
even that much of there.
It's,
Yahoo is kind of on its way out.
yeah, so that's what I was gonna say, Justin.
think
I don't want
Yahoo's
to
the-
offend you.
It's a very old, long-running web portal. With
It's not where the
with
kids
email.
today are getting their news.
it's not.
Well, I
where-
still have an email that's actually from it's not even a Yahoo account. It's an account from some like Pac Ma Bell.
Oh yeah, I still have an SBC Global account.
that like got bought by somebody who got bought by somebody else and is now
Yeah.
part of this conglomerate thing, but my email is now through Yahoo. Yeah. I got it.
Yeah.
Robert Bigelow, that is my favorite whiskey. Blanton's. That's good stuff there. 3 Rocks of Ice.
Oh,
Ooh, it's perfect.
Speaking of imposter syndrome,
Imposters.
I'm speaking tomorrow at the Taste of Science event, and I'm assuming that someone wants to hear about my life for 15 minutes.
They do, because you're
but-
interesting.
But I worked really hard on a presentation that's basically just a bunch of really silly pictures of me in my various stages of larval metamorphosis to where I am today, and it should be interesting. The person going on before me is talking about what is it? Fungi research. So
the fungus among us.
yes. So yeah, I'm excited. It's going to be
should
very
be.
So
interesting.
I had to look
Great.
this up.
You're gonna have so much fun.
Yeah, I have to
Had to
bring, I have
look
to
this
bring
up.
some TWIS swag that I find. somewhere.
According to the Wikipedia,
Mhm.
imposter syndrome, also known as imposter phenomenon,
Uh-huh.
fraud syndrome, or the imposter experience, is a psychological pattern in which people doubt their accomplishments
Uh-huh.
and have a persistent, often internalized fear of being exposed as a fraud.
Correct.
Fraud.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Because I haven't been actually doing this show for as long as I have.
I know. You haven't been on the TV a bunch of times or anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's
Yeah.
all kind of like compared to what? Like,
Well, yeah, I mean that's probably part of it. Oh, sorry.
Right.
But that's part of my thing, right? Is that like I'm going to this event that historically has been all about research and, those scientists wearing lab coats and goggles and,
okay.
and they have been after me for a year to talk at one of these events, and I keep saying no because I'm not one of those people. And eventually I gave in, and here I am. So we'll see how it goes.
So
It's going to be very unconventional.
So I actually work at a place where people wear the goggles, the gloves, and the lab coats.
Yeah.
They go, "Oh, where were you working before this?" And I'm like, "Well, I was a car salesman." And they look
What?
like,
Yeah.
like, really? Like,
Yeah. What is
really?"
the opposite of imposter syndrome? That's what I want to know. Overcompensation.
No, really, I bypassed the whole like getting an education thing and just came to work in the bench next to you from working as a car salesman.
Oh my god, that's great. Oh man.
I love it. I absolutely love it. I love that you've liked science for so long, but you never, thought you
Actually,
could do it or never got
my-
into the career, and you just
my
kind of
first-
kept going in your
My
sales
first
stuff.
summer
And
job was in the research
In a
orthopedics
lab.
lab at UC
Yeah.
Davis, and I loved it. And I had
happened?
this
What
is one of those
happened?
things where
Why did you go
take a
this
test. You take a
Vacuums,
test.
right? No, washer
and-
dryers.
You take a test, and then they place you in what your self thingy evaluation test, things you like, things you'd be interested in. I took the test, turned it in, and I ended up with this job. You don't pick the job; they send you to this job, and like I don't know, somewhere like 10th grade, maybe something like that. And so yeah, I should have just I loved it. It was a great job. I should have figured out right then and there that that's what I wanted to do.
You should have, but you didn't. It took a long path. You took the long wandering life path, and you're still taking it.
Going that way.
I don't know. I think, you not having, it's not having the set path of, oh, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to end up doing this, and knowing this, what you want to do in life. Like, it's allowed you so many different experiences that other people haven't had, and won't ever have. I mean, you with your Carney experience, you with like going to LA and trying to do script writing,
Hollywood,
like being a salesman, from working at Sears to working in the car industry, working as a radio DJ, as a science talk show host, working as you opened a clothing store. You've worked in, for the years that I've known you, you have done and tried so many things that other people would just be like, I can't do that. I got a path. I got to stick to my path. And you're like,
You know what
I got a
that's
good
called?
idea.
Science.
Trial
Trial and error.
and error, finding the things. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it.
There you go.
I just thought I wasn't very interested in anything very long.
Well, there you go.
Things get boring. Like, that's also part of it. That's also part of it.
Hey, Robert Bigelow is asking, does Jacksonfly remind anyone of Jeff Goldblum as Dr. Malcolm in Jurassic Park?
Have made that strangers I've met on the street have asked if there's an actual immediate familial relationship there.
Yes, this is definitely a something that has come up before, Robert.
A few times.
A few times.
Here and there.
There's been good art on this in the past. Didn't somebody make images of you? You and Jeff Goldblum? Yeah, Hot Rod says, yeah, it's why we call Justin Jeff all the time. Okay.
Robert, your first job was at a marine biology research station in Big Pine Key in the Florida Keys. Cool.
Hey, Strengths, maybe we should interview Maya Bialik. That'd be fun. Why not? Hey, Blossom.
Well, she's an anti-vaxxer, which is what I wrote in the chat room.
But I don't think she's not an anti-vaxxer. She's not anti-vaccination. She did make a few comments that I can kind of understand, but she's not anti-vax. And I think it is a misrepresentation.
Hey, did we get sent?
I think. I mean, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong.
I remember reading a pretty in-depth interview with her about it, but I could be wrong.
Speaking of interviews, did we ever get the I Contain Multitudes book? Did anybody ever send that to us?
No.
Okay.
We should have gotten it. Yeah.
Should have. I found it on my lonesome.
The book's great.
Have to interview.
Yeah, I know him, so I could probably reach out.
You're kidding me.
Nope, I know him, so I could probably reach out and get him.
I went to go look him up, and it turns out I've been following him for a really long time on Twitter.
Yeah.
Or the other way around.
I've met him. He's a cool guy.
Yeah,
He's
I
very,
mean,
very nice. He's a very nice and funny person.
that's the thing I got from this book is
he's just
aside from being really well written and very informative
he's
and
a very nice
insightful,
person.
there's some fantastic humor
It's
throughout.
funny.
Somebody
Yeah.
I would love to have on the show.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I need to make a list of people that I need to send an email to and schedule interviews.
Yeah. Make the top 3 Ed Young.
all three of them. Okay, sounds good. The show a week after next, we're gonna have Karen Bondar back on the show. She has written a book called Wild Moms, and she was on the show previously. I think she came on this one. It might have been just on Dr. Kiki's Science Hour. She was on the show during our 24 or 22 hour
Oh wow.
a-thon. She came on the show for a little while during that and talked with us about
The
stuff.
Mayan calendar end of the world show.
Yes.
TWIS
Yes.
Mageddon.
TWIS Mageddon. She was part of the TWIS Mageddon show. Yeah, she's a biologist. She does a lot of TV video work, but she her original book, her first book she wrote was Wild Sex, all about sex in the animal kingdom, and this one is Wild Moms, all about motherhood in the animal kingdom. And so I think it'll be a good interview. So Blair, get your animal mom questions hat
When
on
is this?
for
When is
2
it?
weeks from now, the
2
9th,
weeks from now.
right before Mother's Day. It's apropos timing.
Perfection.
Yes. So I have to put that in our rundown. But that's coming up, and I'd love to. Yeah, I want to get more interviews scheduled. So if you have ideas, email me or tweet to me, and I'll see what I can do. I want to try and get. Yes, there it is. Ed from Connecticut just put the link up there in the chat room. Wild Moms on Amazon. That just sounds bad. Butch, yeah. So I just got a direct message from Comcast that heads up overnight tonight. There's scheduled maintenance registered for your area from 12 a.m. until 5 a.m. So I have an hour until I lose internet for the rest of the night. So I should probably go and do the bed thing. I mean, who needs? I could be on for another hour.
Yeah.
We could be on for another hour.
Yeah.
You should rest up, Blair, because you have to tomorrow night.
I know. I had an 8-hour teen training on Sunday. I had to do some sort of speaking thing yesterday, and then I spoke at a convening at work today. And then I spoke tonight. I'm speaking tomorrow. I'm starting to feel a little bit of an itch right here.
Lots of speaking.
Oh, and I have an 8-hour teen training on Saturday also.
There you go.
It's April. This is what April is like in my life.
I'm starting a new thing at work tomorrow. I don't really understand it. From what I understand, we're going to be putting sequins on pairs of jeans. I don't know. Looking forward.
Yeah, bedazzling.
Bedazzling. Yeah, that's what I think I'm doing.
Do you get to use the nanopore?
No, not tomorrow. I'm using a Nex-Seek and a MySeek.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Gene sequencing. That's awesome. Have a good time doing that.
It's
Just
fun. It's actually not a whole lot of doing. It's a lot of sort of like prepping the meal and then taking it's like doing all the prep work for a meal and then taking a TV dinner and sticking it in the microwave. It's sort of like not a whole lot of flipping of genes to be done while it's actually working.
Still sounds like fun. New skills.
New skills
to pay those bills.
New skills to pay those bills. That's right. All right, everybody. we are going to head out for the night. Thank you so much for watching. Really do appreciate it. We do hope that you have a great week. Come back next week for Justin and Blair ruling the show.
Yeah, that should be fun.
Keep up with us on the social medias in the meantime, because that's where we will be keeping up with you.
Yeah, that's right. Say goodnight, Blair.
Good night, Blair. Say good night, Justin.
Good night, Justin.
Good night, Kiki.
Good night, everyone. Take care.